A bit of a, yeah, you're testing new product ideas, right? New ways of doing it, but with the understanding that, all right, these could fail, and they probably will fail.
Yeah, that was the most important one. Like my pitch was, I'm pretty sure almost everything's going to fail. But what I promise you is that we're going to advance our knowledge and we're going to leave behind assets that we can use to continue forward in the business.
Welcome to Game Changers live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tigera. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. And welcome to Game Changers Live. My name is Sergio Tigera. You can catch us each and every week on your favorite podcast channels, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you choose to check out your shows. And thank you so much for your support, because Game Changers is now a top 2% podcast in the world, and we couldn't have done it without you. So this week, my guest is James Putra. He's a vice president of product strategy at TradeStation Crypto, and it's a cryptocurrency specialist and blockchain thought leader focused on helping people find innovative ways to participate in this space. He's actively involved in a cryptocurrency investing, as well as a key industry advocate for the launch of exchange-listed blockchain products. He's often described as the guy with the crazy idea that might actually work. Incredibly creative dude. And as director of strategy and innovation for TradeStation Technologies, James is active in the blockchain community with speaking engagements, TV appearances, educational content, and mentoring. He co-founded a blockchain strategy group focused on advising companies to develop blockchain knowledge through innovation projects. And he has over 15 years of experience in the fintech and innovation space through a number of startups and corporate roles. So welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sergio, for having me. I'm honored and humbled to be here.
Well, you've got a really interesting background, and a lot of your background has been in the fintech space, in trading and so forth, and now you're combining that into the crypto space as well. But before we get into all that, tell me a little bit about your background. Where did you come up from, and how did you get involved with all this?
So I've had an awesome childhood. I grew up all around the world. My family's from Malaysia, England, the US. I had 4 sets of grandparents growing up. So I had just such a cultural mix of influences in my life. And it's probably one of the most important shaping factors for me that just taught me to think globally and be really more well-rounded and sort of respect other people. I got my way into fintech financial services kind of on accident. My stepdad at the time, he was trying to get me interested in trading. I was probably 18 years old, and he was telling me that you got to trade. And I was just like, there's no way that this is possibly cool if my dad does it. There's just no possible way. Over time, he wore me down. I bought a little bit of Best Buy shares, and lo and behold, made some money. And greed kicks in, addiction kicks in, and that just sort of sent me down this path. And I've always had an entrepreneurial side. Was never really one that was like signing me up for a job that's just in the box. So I always found myself doing some super interesting things. And along the way, I worked with and helped launch a company that does equity and options trading signals. And the company was 4 employees, or I was employee number 4. We grew that, sold it. Probably one of the most interesting experiences of my life, but also one of the worst things you could do for a 25-year-old is give them success right out of the gate out of college. I think everything's easier.
So this is easy. We can replicate this all day.
I did launch a hedge fund after that. Also did pretty good, but then housing crisis came in. Part of the fund was in housing, and just was not really bad time to be in the hedge fund business. I shifted my focus over to going into more retail mass market as opposed to kind of being on the trading desk. And I found my way over to E-Trade, where they wanted help to launch a Forex trading business. And through having done startups before and launching other businesses, it was just kind of a natural fit that I've traded FX, so they want to get in the FX business. And that was a good launching pad for me. And I did that for about a year. And California is awesome. I loved it at the time, but it was expensive. And I missed my family back here in Florida. And I had a chance to get a job with TradeStation And they wanted someone to come in and help them run their US business active trader platform, as well as go to Japan and launch a Japanese trading business. And I thought, sounds great. It's like I just did it here. Let me go over to TradeStation. I did that, got them up and running with the Japanese equities trading business, came back to the US after spending, a lot of time on planes back and forth to Japan.
So you lived there in Japan for some time, right?
Not really lived. It was just a lot of time in hotels. But it was such a super interesting experience because, trading is common all around the world. We are all driven by fear and greed, but there's so many nuances in just presentation that makes a big difference. I learned that there's 13 different ways to say the word buy in Japan. And so it depends if you're going to buy with cash, buy on credit, buy on margin. And so, you have one button and you got to put the word buy there. And there's 13 different ways to say it. So, you learn a lot of very cool things, and very humbled. I went over there thinking I knew everything about trading, and getting there, it's definitely a different customer base. Although they have the same motivations, but how you connect with them is very different. And that was eye-opening to me to really learn how to develop a marketing message, an operational flow, a customer service business. How do you build all those things that are culturally appropriate for Japan, as well as even screen presentations? And that broadened my eyes much further beyond the sort of U.S. markets, and it was awesome. Then I came back.
What were some of the biggest differences, the most eye-opening things that you didn't see coming, that you had a challenge with?
So in Japan, from a kind of organizational perspective, the highest ranking member in the room can make a statement, and that is the statement of fact for everybody in the room. So you'll notice that in meetings often, when you have these senior executives, they're not going to speak up. If for some reason the CEO came in and said, instead of doing the financial services software, today we're going to do widgets, the entire organization pivots towards widgets because that's the direction that the key guy wants to go, which is super amazing to watch, but also challenging to kind of navigate. That's
right.
From the US, like I walk into our CEO's office and I'm like, hey, I don't think this is a good idea. We need to do this. And we can have a dialogue. And it's just not culturally appropriate in Japan. Fortunately, our CEO in Japan went to school in the Western world, former Goldman Sachs. So he's used to this, and it didn't look like too ugly of an American going in there and talking about the businesses. But so it was just a really cool experience to go through there and really figure out how to connect with that Japanese customer and build something that was meaningful and useful for them.
That must have been such a challenge, but such a growth opportunity for you. So you did that for some time. You set that up, and then
I came back to TradeStation, and after you pass off a business, so you spend days and nights and weekends working on something, and you birth this thing, and then you come back to your normal job, and they're like, "Well, it's just kind of boring. Like, what am I going to do here? No one, you only want me to work 9 to 5." So I started looking around for different things, and I noticed that there was a problem in the brokerage firm that, in financial services, it's very hard to experiment. There's so much regulation. There's so much, you're dealing with people's money and trust. So you don't want to just test stuff. Like, it's not a great idea.
Yeah, it's not a good beta spot.
And so you don't have a lot of leeway to be wrong. And we were trying to reshift the strategy of the organization. We'd historically gone after day traders, and we wanted to go after demographic that was not necessarily tethered to the computer, somebody that worked full time, but also traded very actively, and trying to figure out how do you shift a whole product suite that is geared around someone that's like 12 screens sitting at a desk to someone that's like me and you that are going to run between meetings and place trades. So it's kind of a whole mindset, a whole shift around the organization. And we didn't have a good way to experiment. We didn't have a good way to look at the data. So I pitched this innovation lab and convinced them that I'm going to go and do all these projects. Almost all of them are going to fail, but we're going to develop and move our business forward through these different experiments. And
so it's a bit of a, you're testing new product ideas, right? New ways of doing it, but with the understanding that, all right, these could fail, and they probably will fail.
That was the most important one. Like my pitch was, I'm pretty sure almost everything's going to fail. But what I promise you is that we're going to advance our knowledge, and we're going to leave behind assets that we can use to continue forward in the business. And out of that, we built our entire data analytics program. So we have now a pretty good BI setup that's doing crunching on our data, looking at it across all the customers, being able to see what's going to happen with them. We did things in that group like predicting when customers are going to leave, what do they need. I have a lot of data. So if Sergio, if you're trading every day and if you trade every day on Tuesday, if you trade every day and Tuesday at 10 o'clock you lose every Tuesday, maybe I should tell you, like, how about I send you an email about some education or do something to distract you so you don't trade at 10 o'clock. Those kind of things were what we were experimenting with that later went on to become our real core analytics program around how do we look at all the information we have and how do we make the customer experience better with that information.
And you're looking at the behaviors and analyzing behaviors and seeing if you could help nudge in different directions. I mean, that is micro, real tight analysis, huh?
Yeah, and it's difficult because as brokers, we can't really suggest or nudge. What we would want to do, though, is if I see that you've lost a number of trades in a row, I'm going to want to send you something that maybe builds your spirits back up, gets you some education. If I see that you're enjoying equities, maybe we want to service you some things around different trade ideas that you can do. So it's trying to put things that are within your view that might be of use for you and experiment with those. So that was one big thing that came out of it. The other thing was the crypto business. We went to the MIT Media Lab, I want to say 2014, and we were presented with Bitcoin. It was very cool. We went in there, we thought this is really interesting. We also were presented with a camera that could see around corners. It could read a book without opening the cover. I played with a Skype session that let me shake the hands of somebody on the other side of the world.
Wow.
All very, very cool stuff, right? But come on, how long is it going to take for that to become commercially viable? So I bucketed Bitcoin in that same kind of
category, right?
Yeah, and little by little, that just sort of festered inside of us, and myself and the CEO were talking about it, bouncing it around. Some folks in the organization were interacting with it, and I got convinced by a friend of mine, probably about a year later, to trade Ethereum, and that's when I was really like head in hooked. I bought Ethereum, I want to say like $20, which I thought was expensive at the time, and I sold it at 40. I thought I was a hero.
Yeah.
Hindsight, I probably should have held the position, but I was still a good trade. What that did for me, though, was it opened my eyes that all of the things I have learned over my career as a trader, from technical analysis, chart patterns, discipline, psychology, played extremely well in crypto, and much better for me than it did for equities. And that's when I just was down the proverbial rabbit hole, as I kind of like to say. And
what was it about Ethereum that caught your attention?
It was pure greed. I made money, just like the Best Buy trade. I made money. I doubled my position. That was enough that got me interested. And then I'm part of my personality is I'm a knowledge junkie. I devour knowledge everywhere possible. And so as soon as you start to scratch the surface on crypto or Ethereum as an example, there's so much to learn and so much to see.
Right.
It plays to that knowledge desire. And same thing with Bitcoin. It just plays to that knowledge desire and got me really excited about that space. And I came in one day.
Let me ask you, because I've spoken to a lot of people about this that either have a very surface level view and understanding of blockchain and crypto and so forth, and have a difficult time seeing the opportunities, being able to just wrap their mind around NFT, where it's a digital asset. The more you spread it out, the more valuable it becomes, the more recognizable it becomes, and so forth. But when you're stuck in your traditional ways of thinking, like you buy a piece of art, you like to hang it on your wall, you don't invite half your block to come in and look at it. How would you recommend that people shift that mentality to be open and find ways to say, okay, how am I going to incorporate this into my life? And because it is coming and it's already here, but I think it's such infant stages at this point. We're still like in the early internet stage of now what's with Web3.
Yeah. So I think it's a very good question. And, it's my whole career has been really around trying to help people find out a more understandable way into different spaces like this. And if the question is how does somebody open their mind beyond what they currently know to be able to see the possibilities, right? Take the blinders off, so to speak. And it's a big challenge. And what I see happening is this technology and pace of change has gone so fast that it's not even like you had an incremental chance to go from your flip phone to an iPhone.
Right.
This is like a massive shift, and cryptocurrency has scared a lot of people, made a lot of people wealthy, and changed the game in many ways. Now you add on NFTs, and it's such a total mind shift of how you think about the world in terms of what culture is, what is value, what is that you're going to show off and interact with. And a lot of people are still stuck in that, wait a minute, Apple is in my retirement account and I'm holding it. And so Apple is a company that does a quarterly report. And so it's a real big challenge. How do you open up your eyes? I think that the most important thing is just to recognize that change is inevitable and it's happening much faster than any of us can really comprehend and realize. The shifts in crypto, we joke, it's like light speed. 1 year in crypto is like a 10 or 15-year career, but it happens so quick. The idea about NFTs and where it really misses most of the people in the US. Well, like crypto missed most of the people in the US because we've got a great banking system. Well, we have a solid banking system.
Correct. Right. Yeah. It's not optimal, but
in the NFT space, where it's missing a lot of people is more on a demographic divide than so much on like participation in finances or not. The interesting part is that the NFTs are really a way to tokenize your culture and to flex and posture. I talked to my dad about this. I said, you drive a nice car. You like to drive that around. You've got a nice watch. When you go out at night, you put on a nice suit. And when you get together with your friends, they're like, hey, nice watch, nice car. I don't have a nice watch. I wear a Fitbit. But I got some nice NFTs. And in my culture, my community, having that artwork or having those, being part of those communities is valuable and something that we share in common. And it's not so much about just displaying artwork. I think that's where we've gone wrong in explaining this, is that it's not just a JPEG. It's not just a digital version of art. The way that communities are being built on top of these NFT groups is phenomenal. And it's creating these just ecosystems and small subcultures that are all getting together around some idea. Illuminati is an interesting one. It's around a kind of an idea, and they start to become these human games. Well, human games is a bad word, but it's like a real life game. Instead of playing a board game like Monopoly or going out to your computer and playing Call of Duty, you're actually engaged in treasure hunts or types of information seeking, and you're part of these groups. Bored Ape Yacht Club is another one. They have this ticket to this community, and it's become a status symbol. And
which one is that you said?
Bored Ape Yacht Club.
Oh, the Bored Ape, the most famous, of course.
The one that I was able to, so with my CEO, that resonated the most was the Australian Open. And you could buy a piece of the court, you get a tennis ball, and every time the tennis ball hits your square and scores a point, you get a point. And you get some value. And the ones that have the most value at the end of the game are going to get a physical tennis ball. So you're engaged in the sport. You're a participant.
Interesting.
It's an NFT, but you don't have to worry that it's like this weird image that you don't understand. It's kind of, I own this square. And so I don't know, I'm rambling on a little bit, but
no, but one of the interesting things that I find with that is listening to Gary Vee, and he made a great point. He says right now in this NFT world, the novelties on the front end and the utilities on the back end. But in about 5 years, companies are going to figure out how to put the utility on the front end, and the art or whatever that is, it's a novelty, but it gives you, let's say, access, right? It's almost like buying a ticket to a club, a community, a tribe that you want to be a part of. And like you said, it's giving individuals the ability to, say, sell their ideas, their IP, and everyone could participate in investing in that individual and their idea. Like Bored Ape, if you owned one of those NFTs, just because of the sheer popularity of it, now all of a sudden it's 10, 100, 1,000-fold.
It's super interesting for me. One piece that got me hooked on this space, besides making a little bit of money, because that's always seems to be my gateway.
Sure. But that'll be the entry for most people, right? That they get into crypto because, oh, they see the opportunity, they're chasing the dollars. Then you got to kind of figure out, okay, well, what am I doing in this space?
The part that's super interesting for me about this is today, if you look at our models with companies and brands, it's really designed to extract value from the consumer. So I have a clothing brand. I want to sell you stuff. I'm getting your money and your value is the clothing, but I'm extracting value from you. In this NFT world, it's a little bit different. It's the actual brand must find ways to enrich the value of the holders, or the holders will not come. And so they're creating this reverse pattern where you need to find a way that your participants can gain and can garner value out of it. And that's super interesting because it completely reverses the model and makes community building and makes the brands invested in giving value, tangible value to their individual customers. And that's super unique and super important. And it's definitely shifting the way a lot of companies think about how to approach this building products and services.
Now at TradeStation, one of the things that you all do, aside from all the traditional investing and things like IRAs, is that you're allowed to hold crypto in these accounts as well. And offline, we were talking about, can you imagine, okay, holding crypto in your IRAs? And I had not thought about that, honestly. And I'm sure 99.9% of the people out there have not even considered that. What are the ramifications of that? You know, tell me more about that, tax advantages, things like that.
Certainly.
How does that going to work?
Last year, I traded a lot on my individual crypto account. I got a tax file that was like somewhere around 700 pages of all my transactions, only the sell transactions. So it's a lot. Each one of those are potentially taxable event, and each one of those I need to report a cost basis back to the IRS on my individual account. So it's quite burdensome.
That is just a normal individual account.
Yeah, that was because I was trading like a maniac. So most people don't trade that often. But even if you have one transaction, you're going to get a file you got to report to the IRS, and there's some taxable event. Underneath an IRA, all of that is deferred because an IRA works like real simply. An IRA is a container that is going to defer your tax liability to some future date. And there's different variants that you can have, but let's just take the basic IRA. Whatever you put into that IRA and whatever you invest in that IRA appreciates tax deferred, and you're only taxed when you take it out at retirement.
Right.
So think about my example. If I traded that however many thousands of trades in my IRA, I report zero of it to the IRS. I don't have to give anything to the tax man because I'm going to wait until I'm 65, 70, whatever the retirement age is. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity where you can have your assets grow in a tax deferred manner and then take them out strategically at retirement so that you're not getting penalized on large taxes. I mean, today, short-term capital gains is 40%. If you trade on an individual basis under an IRA, that's all deferred. And hopefully in the next, I'm 40, so hopefully by the time I'm retiring, they figure out this taxes and it's no longer capital gains, it's something else. But you know, I can move that down the line. So what's really nice is that it creates this protected shell that provides definite tax advantages for your investments inside of that container. And what we saw was an opportunity in the space because what do you do with your crypto? What do you want to do with your retirement? You want to hold that in some type of retirement account. We already offered IRAs for equities and options and futures, and we thought natural extension. Let me just open this up and let people hold crypto underneath that IRA. And so today our company offers a product that has equities, options, and futures under that IRA. And you can go and trade as much as you want, as little as you want. It all kind of grows in that tax advantage container. We saw that, like, why do we want to do it? If you go back to how you typically have to open up an IRA for crypto, it's pretty brutal. It involves an LLC, it involves a custodian, it involves a tremendous amount of fees. It was kind of contra to what, like, we believe is like everything should just be as easy as possible. I don't want Sergio to worry about his accounting and the LLC and the filings. Just focus on your investments. That should be all you have to do. Let us handle all that nonsense behind the scenes.
Right. Now, if you qualify for, let's say, a Roth IRA where you could pay with after-tax dollars, and then you pay it in, and your growth then is not going to be taxed. Wouldn't that be advantageous, considering just the let's say the macro growth trend, that if we believe that crypto over the long term is going to stick around and is going to go up in value, isn't it better to buy your crypto holdings now via Roth, pay your taxes now? That way you don't have to pay on the gains on the back end.
We probably should talk about the Roth IRA versus traditional IRA, and that a Roth IRA is taxed based on your initial tax bracket. So money going in is post your payroll. So if I earn $100, I pay payroll taxes and I can put into the Roth IRA.
Right, you've already paid.
Then I take it out without any taxes, which is phenomenal. So if the other IRA you don't pay any taxes on the way in, you pay taxes on the way out. So Roth is such an awesome tax advantage if you can take advantage of it. Because
if you're within the range, let's say.
Yeah, there's criteria, and if you can get into that,
so what percentage, I don't know if you know this or not, but what percentage of clients in TradeStation actively hold crypto in retirement accounts? When did you guys start doing that, and do you see it growing?
So we launched in December 2021, so it's a new offering for us.
Yeah, literally a month. So you just basically launched it. Okay.
So everything's like everything looks like this, but it's very rapidly growing, as you'd expect any kind of new thing to take off. It's hard to give the percentages, but what we do see is that the ratios are interesting. So we thought that we would see, traditionally in an IRA for our business, we're going to see that it's about, we forecasted 30% crypto, 30% cash, 40% securities. And it's reversed. It's something like 40% crypto, 40% crypto, 40% cash, 20% securities. So
wow.
And now, to be fair, it's the nature of the type of person that's jumping in, because
they
tend to be more
right. It's not the traditional investor.
But what's super interesting for us is that, let's say you hold an equity IRA and you're holding cash because you don't want to trade. You can hold stable coins 1-to-1 for the dollar and earn 6% or whatever the rates are. So there's so much interesting opportunity beyond just the growth appreciation. That's fantastic. Definitely with us, but there's other IRA offerings that are starting to emerge. It's a $10 trillion space. So it's a lot of pie to chew up, and there's going to be more and more folks coming into the place to go after that opportunity.
So James, I asked this to all my guests, and we're going to shift gears a little bit here as we wrap up. Was there a moment in your life that was a game-changing moment for you that really either lit the light bulb in your head, you had an epiphany, was something that really launched your career or your way of thinking? Was there a moment like that in your career that you can talk about?
I think it was a kind of not a specific singular moment. There were a lot of things that built up to it. I had a mentor, kind of a wild dude, but he really pressed me hard around thinking, application of logic, application of learning, pressed hard on speed reading and how to consume information and learn it as quickly as possible, and put me down that path, which was like my desire for knowledge amplified, and just in a crazy amount of desire to grow that information. So I probably over a period of about 4 or 5 years, without really knowing it, developed all these individual tools and capabilities, like speed reading, like how does the brain work? How does the subconscious work? How do you apply logic? And all those pieces come together into this very interesting, like, holy cow, you can drop me anywhere in the world in any situation. I'm gonna figure out how to come up with some gold in that situation.
And that is so powerful. I mean, that moves from kind of a victim mentality to I'm in the driver's seat type of thinking, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing that a lot these days, where people are kind of waking up in the sense that they've been in roles that they're kind of tired with, the great resignation, this whole thing that's going on. and moving into a new space. But that requires a lot of courage, a lot of guts, because you're getting out of your comfort zone and having that mindset, that mentality that where, like you said, you can be dropped into any situation, any conversation, and know how to swim, know how to come up with ideas in that space is incredibly powerful. So what are, I mean, are there some exercises? Is there an approach? Are there some books that you recommend that people read?
Yeah.
But what would you say?
So there's a few that I really liked. The things that there's some concepts in quantum physics that are kind of interesting. And quantum physics is not as scary as you think. There's a guy called Dr. Fred Alan Wolf, probably one of the most interesting people I've listened to. He talks about this concept where there's a master and a slave, and you cannot be both. So picture your mind. In your mind, you've got an elephant and a person riding the elephant. You can be one of those two. Are you the person driving your mind, or is your mind driving you? And so that was such an interesting concept to me, because it starts to take you down this path of, I control my own thoughts. I understand, what I'm trying to do. And I really quickly got to a place where emotions, while they feel real, are not real. They're just kind of thoughts and pieces. So how do you control your emotions? And so I would say definitely check out Fred Alan Wolf. There's a book called Super Brain Power, and there's a book called Optimal Thinking, and there's a book called Being Logical. If you start there, you're going to be in really, really good shape. Those are going to really help focus on thinking. And in my opinion, that's the most important thing you can do, because once you can know how to use your own brain and your own thought process, you can do a ton of stuff, and you start to realize where your weaknesses are and how do you apply them. That was an awesome learning for me. And just learning how to use my subconscious. Have you ever had that aha moment?
Exactly.
If you have that aha moment, your subconscious is just designed to do all these crazy combinations of all the thoughts you have. And eventually it hits on something and it says, hey, is this valid? And sometimes it is, a lot of times it's not. And so if you're working on a problem, they always say go to sleep, but I intentionally throw this to my subconscious. I'm like, hey, I don't know the answer. I'm going to pass this to my subconscious. I'll come back to it once I get an answer. And I would say it's almost not failed me that usually within a day or two, something pops in my mind. I'm like, oh, that's what I was looking for. And I'm able to move on.
That is so powerful. And that's one of the things that that we focus on in this Game Changer community that we're launching here in about a month or so. And I'm going to have you on as a guest panelist for the member group, because there's so much to go into in that space. But like, you're right. I think people tend to be limited by their thinking, right? What's between the ears. It's not their physical or mental abilities. Obviously, people are brilliant, but we tend to hold ourselves back through a lot of our fears and unconscious, biases and so forth. So having that understanding of how to use the tools to get in there and rework your thinking has a huge impact on your career and your success long term. So
just happiness too. It's remarkably peaceful when you can figure out what's going on in your own mind.
And that is absolutely imperative right now, especially with the mental health, and the fact that there's so much information coming at us from all angles, especially social media, in terms of, are we as good as everyone looks on social media? You tend to get down about that. Exactly. You understand how this framework works, then you can manage your emotions and happiness in a much better way. James, you've been awesome, my brother. Thank you for being on TradeStation. You guys are doing some amazing things, and I love the way you think. Like I said, we're going to have you in the community for sure. And what's the future here for you and the company?
So we're on to some really interesting things. I can't go into a ton of detail from the company perspective,
Sure.
But I can say that how you think of TradeStation today is definitely not how you're going to think of TradeStation by the end of the year. We've got a lot of super interesting things happening right here in Miami. We're making a lot of big investments out here and changes in sort of what we can do, how we operate. The scale of the business is definitely something that should be considered. In terms of what's up for me personally, that's hard to say. I know I'm very confident it's going to be something exciting and crazy. I always say I'm not smart enough to say no, and so it usually gets me on some interesting adventures. But I will be on this path of knowledge seeking and continued growth. Is every day I try to learn a little bit of something. I learn something from you. Every chance I get, I just try to learn something, and I'll see where that goes. I am focused on doubling my capabilities and my influence and impact in the space, and really just looking to give back and try to help build some more communities and help other people that are trying to come up find their way and find some good things to latch onto.
Get 1% better every day, guys. Be a game changer in your own life. Invest in your own education, like you said, and be a game changer in someone else's life. Make sure to share this with one of your friends or colleagues or family members who needs to hear it. James has a wealth of information. You can find more information at TradeStation.com as well as Putra.com. You can find information on him. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you next week. If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives.